is an inspiration to many people, to myself included. We met today for the first time. We talked on the phone and done some things, but Eric has an interesting story to tell about, to me, it's actually being true to yourself, both before coming out and afterwards, and being in the military, being true to himself, started serving his country, what he wanted to do, and then coming out after he was injured in the war to secure the same rights everyone else has in the country. He's talking about his experience that way in the military as a gay man, just being serving in the military, period, and what that experience was like, and being a gay man in American society. Here we go.
Thanks. Thank you. That was for him, right? And forgive me if I project loud. It's the Marine in me. So sometimes I get people tell me, like, you're too loud. I'm like, I'm sorry. And bear with me. I have, as you can see, some tea. I never get out. Does anyone get allergies? I reside in San Antonio, Texas, so it happens about once a year I get allergies. So my throat is the itch. I've had to cough a little, had the runny nose or whatever, and so and I just finished doing a 45-minute interview, so my voice is going to go hoarse a little. So bear with me, and if I do cough, so wait, this is my turn.
Sorry, it's all about me.
So thank you. Please come on in. I just started. Okay, everybody look around. Let's see who came in. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not shy when I get up in front of a crowd. I've been doing this for 8 years, public speaking. So for the next about 35, 40 minutes, I'm going to share a little part of my life, my story with you, and how it is that I became to even standing in front of you today. It's kind of an interesting story, and it's one that I reflect on every day, and especially coming up next month in March because it's my anniversary. So, as I stated, I'm from San Antonio, Texas, so I'm not enjoying the snow, so no offense. But I do like it cool. In fact, my window in my room, because I think even right now, walking through the doors, the heater is on so much. I actually, the hotel has the heater on so high that I have to open my window because I like to have it cool when I go to sleep at night. But I come from San Antonio, Texas. I actually graduated high school in 1989. So I'm about 44, turning 45 this year. And when I graduated high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I knew I wanted to leave home, as all of us at that age are like, I want to get away from mom and dad. And trust me, you know what I mean. And so my mom wanted me to go to college, and I didn't want to go to college. I was just tired of school. And she didn't want me to go in the military, and at the time I wanted to join the United States Marine Corps. And so I think she was apprehensive to the fact that my father served in Vietnam in 1967-68, got drafted, and my grandfather served in World War II in Korea, and my other grandfather on my mom's side, on my maternal side, served in Korea as well. So her excuse or justification was our family has seen enough of war. So in 1990, when I joined the military, of course, with my reassurance to her that we would never be in war. And it was interesting because I joined in June of 1990, only to have, that was the first time, or that we had seen where Iraq had invaded Kuwait the first time, where that's where we hear Desert Storm. And I know some of you are young, because who was born after 1990 or around 1990? Raise your hand. So that's, I think, the majority of you. Not you, Mike. Don't raise your hand. My friend back there. So anyways, so I'm going to share a little history with you, too, and on my life. But so I joined the Marine Corps, and against my mother's wishes, but she supported me and everything, and my father did as well. And it was interesting because, of course, we saw Desert Storm happen the first time Iraq invaded Kuwait, and then we got involved to liberate Kuwait from, being taken over by Saddam Hussein. Well, as time went on, and of course, to prove my mom right, as parents are always right, especially our mothers, because when I enlisted, I had assured her, I said we would never go to war after Desert Storm ended. And sure enough, the following year, a year and a half after I got in the military, in 1992, I was sent to the country of Somalia. Most of you will familiarize yourself with Black Hawk Down. So I got sent to Somalia for Operation restore hope. So I lived in the stadium and on the airfield, and I was there for 92, 93, and then left about, February, March of 93, before the whole Black Hawk Down with the helicopters, like if you've seen the movie. So I was there, and of course I had to hear my mom saying, "See, I told you this is why I didn't want you in the military." So as time went on, I found a passion for I guess the discipline, the camaraderie, the esprit de corps, the whole military bearing and everything. I also found the discipline and the maturity I needed. So then I started going back to college at night after work. So I had this life that was beginning for me. I started to mature and grow, not in height as you can tell, but life went on, and now fast forwarding to it was of course 2000. I had just gotten home from Japan, going into 2001, and a lot of you, some of you were not a lot of you, but some of you were young at that time to even remember what 9/11 was like. I think for some of you, you were like, I think because that's almost like already been 12 years, so you were like 3 or 4 or something, or 5 at the time. But that changed the country, and it pretty much changed the armed forces or the defense of where we need to be as far as readiness to, in case anyone ever attacked the country again. So in the fall of 2002, which of course was the 1-year anniversary of 9/11, we started hearing rumors, even though after 9/11, in October of 2001, then the country went to Afghanistan, which was the start of Operation Enduring Freedom. We call it OEF. And that was, of course, just ended this past December. It was one of the longest wars the country has ever been in. And we still have about 10,000 troops in Afghanistan. People just don't, that you don't hear about it, but there are still about 10,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan, even though the war has now been turned over to the Afghan army. But anyways, after in 2002, we started hearing rumors, now going back to Iraq. And people, especially those of us, I was coming on my 12-year anniversary in the Marine Corps. I had loved it so much I kept re-enlisting. And now I'm in my 30s, my early 30s. I'm not 19 years old anymore. And we started hearing the rumors that, Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction. And of course, because 9/11 had just come on its year anniversary, we didn't want another attack on the country. Of course, the country was on a very, very high alert that had been the one attack that we had ever had, of course, since something like that, since Pearl Harbor, even though we did get attacked in 1993. Someone had bombed the World Trade Center then as well. And of course in 1995 with the bombing in Oklahoma City. So we knew that we needed to, of course, do something before Saddam Hussein attacked our allies or even us. So in January of 2003, after the holidays, and I didn't go home for Christmas, I actually got sent, I was on one of the advanced parties who got sent to Kuwait. And we were there to now mobilize the armed forces of the United States and its allies, of course, with Great Britain. I remember Canada didn't want anything to do with Iraq. I know Japan sent troops. I think Spain sent troops. All these other countries who were now going to participate with us to now go into Iraq, because the country or the United Nations had already said to Saddam Hussein, we are going to send in inspectors into your country and you need to comply with the United Nations. Because Iraq does have a representation in the United States as a delegate. And so the whole gist of it was that Iraq was like, well, we're not going to let you come into our country to inspect. And so then that's when we got the word, of course, as time was going on during all this deliberation. It was, now the end of January, leading into February, and now going into March. And then that's when President Bush at the time, which those of us in Kuwait, and during that time for January, February, and early weeks of March, the U.S. forces were building up. I mean, we had built up to 100,000 plus men and women from all the branches of service into Iraq for now the invasion into Iraq, which of course became Operation Iraqi Freedom. When we got word to go into Iraq, it was interesting because I remember I was coming right at my 12th anniversary. It was March 4th. I had already passed it. And I was in charge of 11 young Marines, and I was worried about them. Would they get hurt, or would I get hurt, or, would we make it out alive? I didn't know what it was going to be like. I knew it wasn't going to be like Somalia. I knew this time it was war. And so we didn't really know what to expect. That morning we went into Iraq, and I remember the night before, we started moving our vehicles from Kuwait going north into Iraq, and it was dark like it is outside, and it was cold, not as cold as this. And I remember we stopped, I think, 2 miles before on the Kuwaiti side, before the Iraqi border, and if you've ever seen it on the History Channel or Discovery on the anniversary, they always show when the bombings started dropping in Baghdad, and they coined it shock and awe. And I remember as we were on the Kuwaiti side, we could hear the bombs dropping off in the distance. And to give you a kind of an idea, it sounds like thunder. It sounds like thunder off in the distance, but like constant thunder with the bombs. The next morning at daylight, we started up the vehicles, and I was on a logistical convoy, and that convoy with 1st Marine Division, and I was with 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, we charged into Iraq. We didn't really face any resistance in the first, like, I guess, town or village that we came across. There was a lot of Iraqi people. They were waving, like, I want to say, like, white flags or white cloths, white scarves, or anything that was white, they would wave it. And I guess that was to tell us, like, hey, we're civilians, and we're not the Iraqi army. And I think the Iraqi army was already pushing north to defend Baghdad and their major cities. And my unit stopped outside the city of Basra, which I think as you go north, you have Basra, Nasiriyah, Fallujah, and then Baghdad, which is their major city, has about 6 to 8 million people, like New York City, their capital of the country. Well, we stopped outside the city of Basra to regroup, and my vehicle, when we got into this position, it was the tail end of the convoy. And I remember I was frustrated because I think sometimes I do have a little OCD. All the vehicles were scattered. They were just sporadic, and I remember my driver, I told him, just go park over here, because we needed to get off the road. And it was, we had only been in the country for about, I think, 2.5 hours. And I remember I got off my vehicle once it stopped because we had been traveling, and I needed to use the restroom. So I think if this was the passenger side and my driver, who was a young Marine, I opened the door, got off, and walked that way. The second time I got off my vehicle after getting back on, I walked to the back to get some supplies for a Marine who needed something because I had some supplies on my vehicle for this Marine. Well, the third time I got off my vehicle, it was to eat my MRE, which is our meal ready to eat, those kind of pasteurized meals that come in those packets when we're in the field and everything. And we had so much gear and I had so much gear in the front of my Humvee. I didn't want to open the whole pack and try to eat it there. And I had missed all my meals the previous day because we were getting ready to move forward. So started getting the vehicles lined up, making sure everyone had their ammunition, my Marines, make sure that they were in their positions they were supposed to be. So it was pretty chaotic. And so I had missed all the meals the previous day and breakfast that morning. And here it is now coming on noon. Well, I decided, I'm going to eat my meal. And I never used to warm up my meal. And so I decided as I came out of the vehicle, just like on your vehicles, you have the right rear view mirror. And I started to open the meal, started to warm it up. And then that's when I decided that, I was going to get something out of the passenger side. I left the canvas door open, like you leave your car door open. And I took about two or three steps. And that's when the explosion went off. I mean, it was huge. It was like, like you see on Hollywood, the movies. My hearing was gone. All I had was this huge ringing in my ear. And to give you an example, if you cover your ears and you kind of hear this muffle sound, I mean, it felt like the air was knocked out of me. I was probably not from here to, a few, 5-10 feet away. My eyes were closed. There was a lot of smoke, and there was dirt falling, debris. I was awake, and I didn't know what had happened. I had no idea what had happened. And I remember opening my eyes, and you could just smell the smoke of, not like when you're burning something in your fireplace, but it was like kind of like diesel fuel or something, where something was burning. It was awful. And I was gripping my right arm, and you can see the damage from my arm, because my arm was broken. And I see that my index finger is gone. And you could see the bone, and my hand was covered in blood, and it looked like maple syrup. It's not like Hollywood, the red color, things like that. But I didn't know what had happened, and I tried to move, and even being so conscious and coherent, I thought I was paralyzed. The word paralyzed came in my head because I couldn't sit up. And people were already coming to me, our combat medics, and I remember they took my gun away, my pistol, they took it away. I just see that someone lifted my pistol up because I had it tucked in here in my holster. Then I see people saying, stay with me, stay with us, and I'm like just grinding my teeth. I didn't know what had happened. And of course, people were just, running around. You could see, as I was laying on the sand, not more than 10 minutes later, another explosion went off. And we didn't know what was going on. All I could see was even people who were helping me, like 1 or 2 people, because the Humvee was right there. They jumped on the hood of the Humvee because nobody wanted to be in the sand. Everybody was now figuring out we're in a minefield, and it was like, uh-oh, it's like being in a sea of sharks or something. And there were people who were helping me, and people were yelling and screaming constantly. And people were telling people to stop moving. So some people didn't even want to move. They were like just stuck there in the sand, like, I'm not moving. There's another explosion. And by this time, and to give everyone an idea, as Iraq went on, there were no hospitals. There were no service stations. There was nothing that anyone getting hurt in those first few minutes or hours in the war, or even a couple of days. Everybody that got injured severely like that had to be put on a helicopter and flown back to Kuwait, because we hadn't even, set up tents or anything in Iraq at that time. So I didn't know what my injuries were. Eventually, all I kept thinking was, I'm going to die here. I'm going to die here. And eventually, and then, because I even thought, where's the helicopter? Where's the helicopter? I had been in long enough to know my own experiences. The only way I'm getting out of here alive is to be put on a helicopter. Where's the helicopter? And so they put us on a vehicle. They drove us down a bumpy road, and then you start hearing the sounds of the helicopter. You could hear it, the rotor, as we call it, the tuk, 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 and it got louder and louder. Eventually, they opened the back of the Humvee, and they put us on the helicopter. And I remember the flight going back to Kuwait. All I kept thinking was, and one of the crew chiefs was holding my hand, and I kept just thinking, don't let me die, don't let me die. So when we finally got back to Kuwait, which felt like an eternity, but it was like a 30-minute flight or even less than that, I remember just being taken into a tent, and then I'm given anesthesia, morphine, and then I was out. But eventually I woke up, and I was in this big old tent, had all these hospital beds on this side, had all these beds on this side, and I was the only one laying in this far right bed. And I was so dazed. If you ever had surgery and you come out of surgery, the anesthesia is still wearing off, and you're still like, oh, my hand's over here, and I'm still looking this way. So I was waking up, and then that's when I discovered what my injuries were. My right arm was broken, and as you can see, I have nerve damage because my ulnar nerve is gone. My medial and radial nerve are damaged so bad. My left leg was broken from the blast, and my right leg was so damaged that when I woke up and saw the right side of my sheet was flat, my right leg was gone. The doctors had to amputate it above the knee. By all accounts, or whose record, I don't know, because people told me I had only been in Iraq for 3 hours, just 3 hours that day. So I've never spent the night in Iraq. I've never been, like some people did 2 tours or 3 tours or 6 months to 18 months. I've never done that. I was in Iraq for 3 hours, and that was that was all it took. I had become the first American injured in the Iraq War, in Operation Iraqi Freedom. I was mad because I was like, I can't believe this happened to me, and all the emotions go through you, and then for me, I was like, oh, great, it had to be me. It didn't matter if it was someone else, it was me. And at that time, not to go backwards, but it was 2003, so the country was now coming on its second year of 9/11, the anniversary. So we were fighting 2 wars. So the country was very, very supportive of the wars and the troops and the men and women fighting both in Afghanistan and Iraq, because we're out to get the people, whoever calls 9/11. So being injured like that, people, especially getting injured, I ended up on Oprah Winfrey. I ended up in People magazine because people were always wanting to, tell the stories of the men and women in the armed forces, to just pay homage to them and put us in the spotlight and show our recovery and everything. Because even when I started walking 3 months after my injury, people were there local news was there to capture my story. And I have to tell you on a side note, and this is for me because, and it's something for all of you, it's interesting, whether you're left hand dominant or right hand dominant, this one little area of our finger, which is our index finger, we use it, and that didn't come to me until after I got injured and I was in rehab. I'm right hand dominant. We use it for our everyday pinch. What I mean by that is, like, if you have a necklace, it's a pinch. I use it to, of course, button my buttons. As you can see when I demonstrate, my buttons are like this, but you use it to button your buttons. You use it to lock your necklaces. You use it to put on your glasses. You use it to put on the backings for your earrings. It's our everyday pinch. We use this one little area of our finger probably 1 million times a day, and we don't even realize it. because it's part of our activities of daily living. I mean, we literally use it for everything, even for our pen rests when we're using our pens. So now today I use those kind of big Dr. Grip pens because I have to. I can't use the skinny pens anymore. They don't really hold in my hand right. So I've had to adjust in life, even learning how to walk again. So just to give you an insight of what part of my rehab was like in overcoming an obstacle. I mean, if I hadn't thought I lost my leg and then just to lose this one little area, I was like, great, couldn't you make the challenges a little more harder for me? But, I got through them. So it was interesting, because then now you ask, okay, Eric, what did you do after that? Well, I thought, I didn't want to stay in the military anymore. There was just no way I could stay in the military, because, of course, I probably created a heart attack for my mom, because I was like, to the doctors, I was like, I want to go back. And she was like, probably fainted, because like there was no way I was going to go back to fight, because I wanted to be with my Marines. But that's how, passionate I was for the Marine Corps, for this country, and still am. But eventually I retired in June of 2004, and then I figured out, well, what do I do now? I'm only 32 years old, or 33 now. What do I do and everything? And then I fell into a depression for about 6-7 months. I didn't do anything. I would sleep till 1 or 2, eat, go back to bed again. I did that and people knew that. And I was suffering from post-traumatic stress, PTSD, and so eventually I got into some therapy and everything, as all the veterans we do, because we need to. It's healthy. And eventually, and then of course my mom was like, well, you never finished college. And I was like, oh yeah, I still need to finish college. So eventually I went back to college, and I majored in social work. And it was in social work that I really, really discovered who I was because of my enriched education. I didn't know what, like even a person with a disability, which now I was a disabled person, I didn't know what it meant to even be like, someone who was from a Roman Catholic, Hispanic, Latino family. I didn't know what diverse classes meant. I didn't know what, oppression meant. I didn't know what, stigma meant. I didn't know what stereotype or all that. I didn't know what social justice meant. I didn't know what these things meant. And so while majoring in social work, I was discovering who I was. I was not only disabled now, and of course a veteran, I was also Hispanic, and I was also a gay man. So I was meeting about 4 of the 9 or 10 classes of diverse backgrounds for people of diverse classes. So it was there I was getting my voice. Because now in 2005, as I'm starting my education and learning these things, I noticed something going on in Texas. And it was there that I started to notice that Texas had overwhelmingly passed, as we see that how it's such a big subject today. Texas had overwhelmingly passed their state constitutional banning same-sex marriage. And here I was watching the news, of course, going through my education, and I thought, well, that's unfair. And I kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, well, that's the way it's always been. That's the way it will always be. That's just life. We've kind of said that on some things in society back in the past. And so as time went on, in the following year in 2006, as my education was going on, I started to notice other things going on, like other laws or things that other states were going to do to pass state constitutional bans in same-sex marriage as well. And I remember in 2006 there was 8 more states. I think Arizona was the one who defeated theirs that year. And I thought, this really, stinks. I didn't say stinks. Well, you all are adults. I said, this sucks. And, and I was getting aggravated. And I thought, well, here's someone who lost his leg fighting for the rights and freedoms of people. But, not all of us are treated equally or fairly or, with that dignity and human kindness. So I got to a point where I said, you know what, I need to do something. And I didn't know what to do. And at the time, my partner at the time that I was with said, well, why don't you, contact the Human Rights Campaign? And are we all familiar with the Human Rights Campaign? The largest civil rights organization in the country, with that little equal sign, those 2 yellow parallel bars. And I contacted them and told them my story. And I said, hey, I want to help you. I want to help you fight for gay rights. I was emailing them while I'm saying this. I was emailing them telling you, I want to volunteer. And by the way, I've been on Oprah, so that I thought that would, for sure, secure the deal that I wasn't making the story up, that I was the first American injured in the Iraq War, and I was gay. Because for them, they probably thought, this is too good to be true. And well, of course you can help us. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I just want to volunteer at a gay pride, work at one of the booths. Well, I was so oblivious to the fact that, when they came to me and they said, well, we think you'd be the ideal person to work with us on repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I thought, oh my goodness, I forgot. All those years I served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but I was so immune to it because what it does to you and your life, you become, this totally different person, like a robot. You're living this lie. And so I started working with the Human Rights Campaign. And we had this idea that in 2007, about August, June, or May, Congressman Martin Meehan from Massachusetts was going to introduce legislation in the new session of Congress in '07 to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, to start the process. And it was called the Military Readiness Enhancement Act. So here it is at the end of 2006, and I really didn't know when that was going to happen, and they had already invited me to be part of that idea, and of course to see what happened in 2007. Well, it was earlier than August or July that year, because then I got the call right after Christmas, middle of January, and it was the Human Rights Campaign saying, Eric, we need you to come to Washington in the next couple of weeks. Congressman Meehan is going to introduce his legislation at the end of February. And I was like, okay. And I hadn't really talked to my parents about this because getting injured in the war and having that popularity or distinction, people following you, even, wanting to pay homage to you. My dad being a Vietnam veteran and my mom was a school teacher, they were also being paid that homage and respect. People were always like saying, oh, and my mom kind of jokes with me today. She goes, I was always referred to you I was always referred to people as Eric Alva's mom. They're like, oh, you're Eric Alva's mom. They would never call her by her first name, like, oh, you're Eric Alva's mom. How is he? And she's like, oh, my name is Lois. I'm fine. And so they were in the news as well. So before I had decided to do what I was about to do, I went to their house and I said, I'm about to tell the country my story. And of course, my mom, being apprehensive once again, she was like, why? Why do you need to do this? And I said, because it's the right thing to do. And I think her apprehension was, when people tend to speak out, and not against the government, but on, on issues like this, as being an activist, we've seen like Martin Luther King or Harvey Milk or, Medgar Evers, people tend to want to hurt them. And I think that's what her fear was. She goes, I just worry what people are going to do to you, Eric. There aren't nice people in this country or this world. And I said, I know, Mom, but I'm willing to take that chance. So it was on February 28th of 2007. And if I hadn't been in the news before, now I was in the news more because it was Good Morning America who broke the story. And Good Morning America said, I don't remember the story exactly. And it was Jake Tapper from CNN, but he was with ABC at the time. And it was like, remember 4 years ago, the first American injured in the Iraq War? Well, now he's coming forward. He's a gay Marine. And of course, people, other than my family and my parents who knew, not really even some of my closest friends, a lot of my fellow Marines in the Marine Corps didn't know. The local news, people didn't know. So people watching this that day, people were, of course, it wasn't big as Ricky Martin, but it was big. But people were literally watching TV, even one of my colonels in Washington, D.C., and people were probably drinking coffee or something, and like, so it was big. I had now come out and to say that the first American injured in the Iraq War was a gay Marine, and I was going to work with Congress to now work towards repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And so a lot happened and took off from there, and so it, it's interesting because now we're going into 2008. And it's interesting because now, and I didn't sense it then, but the momentum had started to be built. And I think I now see, or I did see, why Martin Meehan waited until that time. Because now President Bush is coming on his last year as president. He's already done his 2 terms. So now everybody wants that seat. And at that time, the popularity of the war had already started to dwindle fast. People were not happy that the country was involved in 2 wars. Because now the evidence or the stories of why we went into Iraq were lies or something. It didn't matter anymore. And people were angry about that. So now you have all these candidates, in both parties, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, or, even Democrats. But the Democrats are making this promise, just like, Bill Clinton did in 1992. And the Democrats are making this promise, that if you elect me president, I will get rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I'm going to backtrack a little because for those of you, what we did as far as when it becomes like a campaign promise, it was the same thing that Bill Clinton did in 1992. And again, like some of you all were too young to remember that. I was only 21 years old at the time. But at that time, when Bill Clinton got elected president, he made this promise to the country, if you elect me president, I will allow gay people to serve in the military. And so when he got elected, the country wasn't ready for that to happen, or as we saw, because then they made this compromise, which became known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The compromise was, when, like I was telling you, when I joined in 1990, the prohibition about gays in the military was that it was zero. I mean, there was no tolerance for gays in the military. If you were found out to be gay, you would be thrown in prison, the stockade, or the brig, or you would be, of course, dishonorably discharged from the military. And because gays were not allowed in the military at that time. The new law, once Bill Clinton became president, Congress passed and he signed, was Don't Ask, Don't Tell, was when I joined the military, we used to be asked about our orientation on our applications. And if you had put yes to any of those questions, I think some of the questions resembled, have you ever had sexual relations with someone with the same sex? And if you had put yes, then you were automatically disqualified from joining the armed forces. And that was when I joined in 1990. In 1993, the Don't Ask part was, on that whole Don't Ask, Don't Tell, was that the applications, all those forms worldwide, because people even join overseas because sometimes they have family members, who their son, if parents are both military and their son or daughter graduate high school in Germany or Korea, then they have recruiters there too. But those forms worldwide were all tossed out, and they got rid of the questions of asking people about their orientation, because the new law said gays could serve in the military, they just could not tell. And that's what the Don't Tell part came. So Don't Ask was the questions were gone. Don't Tell was, once you were in the military, then you were not to reveal your sexual identity or gender expression, or else you would still be fired or still be imprisoned by this law. But to give you an idea what Don't Ask, Don't Tell was, it was the only law that we had ever passed in this country, this remarkable country, that literally forced people like myself, or even all of you, imagine, to go to work every day and lie about who you were. Because if you didn't, then you were going to lose your job or go to prison. And so imagine, so say for all of you, like, you have midterms coming up and spring break coming up in March. So when you go off to spring break, and whether you're your classmate or, your roommate in the dorm, it's our natural instinct as human beings to be so intrusive and ask someone, so what did you do for spring break? Or what did you do for the Christmas holidays? I mean, I had someone sitting next to me on the plane today asking me, like, oh, well, do you live in New Jersey? Where it's human instinct, for us to be intrusive of each other. So I was always asked, why are you always at the Marine Corps ball by yourself, Sergeant Alva? Or why are you always in the barracks on a Friday night instead of picking up chicks, I mean, it was always like, why don't you have a girlfriend? I mean, after a while, it's like you live this lie for so long. That's why I said, when HRC had approached me, I forgot I had lived under this law because I had become so used to lying. But it makes you feel so less of yourself. And when most people ask me, what was it like serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell? It was stressful. It was stressful because you're wondering, am I going to slip with my pronouns? Am I going to slip and say something that I went on a blind date with someone of the same sex? Did someone follow me to that gay bar because I couldn't just, not want to go anymore? So that's what Don't Ask, Don't Tell did. And during that time, we fired a lot of people, about 14,000, according to Service Members Legal Defense Network. We fired 14,000 qualified people solely for the basis of their orientation, identity, or expression. Qualified people for them doing nothing wrong. And so when 2008 came, now let's go back to 2008, here are all these candidates making this promise. From Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bill Richardson of New Mexico, Dennis Kucinich of Illinois, I think. You had all these candidates making this promise. If you elect me president, I will get rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So momentum was being built fast. And of course, the election happens, Barack Obama is elected president. So those of us in the gay rights groups, like from SLDN, Service Members Legal Defense Network, the Human Rights Campaign, all these civil rights groups, people were like, now we're going to see what happens. And of course, in this first year, nothing really happened. And I shouldn't say nothing really happened. Nothing happened as far as moving Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I think in this first year, in 2009, we saw the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. hate crimes law, come into effect, which is being brought up right now because of the shootings in North Carolina with those 3 students. And everybody does anyone not know who Matthew Shepard is? You can raise your hand if you don't. Matthew Shepard was the student from Laramie, Wyoming, who was beat by, fellow classmates or people in his town solely for being gay. I'm friends with his mom today, Judy Shepard. So Judy Shepard advocated for, of course, the Matthew Shepard. And James Byrd Jr. was an African-American male in Texas who was tied behind a truck and dragged by 2 white men. And so those are hate crimes. So Congress passed the hate crimes law and signed it in 2009. But in 2009, nothing else happened, and those of us in the military and the gay rights groups were like, hey, you made this promise. When are you going to start allowing gays to serve in the military openly? So not to give you all like the details of what legislation was going on, the whole year went by of 2009, nothing happened. But then in 2010, in the last few, I think, 2 minutes of his State of the Union, the president announced, he goes, and we will work together. I will work with Congress this year to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So that May, we actually saw the House hold its first vote on repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and we won. I mean, we succeeded. Of course, the House, the Senate, and the presidency was all controlled by Democratic rule. But I have to tell you, anything that was being passed in legislation was not just all Democrats or not all Republicans. Everything is bipartisan. So I just told you we won 234 votes, because I was sitting in the House that day where the president does the State of the Union when they did the vote. And it was 234 to 194. I think 27 Democrats voted against repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and 18 Republicans voted in favor of repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So this was a bipartisan legislation. Well, we still needed the Senate, because as we all know, Congress is comprised of both houses, and then it goes to the president for his signature. Well, the summer comes, July 4th comes, in September the Senate meets to now do their vote. Well, we failed. The Senate didn't have enough votes to pass Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And at the same time, 2010 was a very, very interesting year, because now we had the birth of the Tea Party. And the Tea Party was so against repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And as you know, as their background and, you know, kind of who they are, I was trying to refrain from calling them names, sorry. And
we understand.
Thank you.
We understand.
So rumors had started focusing. It's another midterm election. So it's 2010 that the House is going to lose maybe 30 seats of the Democrats. You know, we're going to lose control. Well, the election came and gone. The House loses 87 seats, 87 Democratic seats. That means we lost control. So my hope thinking, and even other people in gay rights groups or other groups, was like, we just lost control of the House. So if we try to bring up this vote in the next session of Congress in 2011, the House is not going to pass it. And so I had already became a pessimist. I was hurt. I became negative instantly, like, we'll never get this done. This is just the way life is. And shame on me to lose hope like that. But when you serve under something like that for so long, it hurts. And to hide who you are. But eventually, the election came and gone, and the holidays were upon us, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas. But it's interesting because now I'm getting ready to turn 40 years old. And it's interesting because I get a call from the Human Rights Campaign and says, Eric, you need to come back to D.C. And I'm like, why? What's going on now? And they're like, Congress is going into the lame duck session. So I'm like, really? Oh, okay. And I'm over here on the phone, or Google, I love Google, it's amazing. Because I'm like, lame duck. Because I didn't know what it meant. Do you know what lame duck session means? So lame duck is those 87 people who lost their seats. That means just because they lost that night on Tuesday election night, they don't go to their office the next morning and pick up their coats or stuff and say, okay, adios, I'm out of here, I lost. They still have to do work till at least 31 December. And there's still bills on the floor that they still have to vote for. At the same time, they are moving out of their office, and the other new representatives are coming in for January. So we had this lame duck session. And so they bring up both bills again. They said the Senate now has the votes to bring up Don't Ask, Don't Tell again. So they bring up the votes again. The House passes as normal, because the House was still in control at that time. And that was December 17th, December 18th, the Senate, and now I'm there for the Senate vote. And the Senate passes. 8 Republicans cross over and sign with the Democrats. So Congress had repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We have repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and it couldn't have been a better 40th birthday gift, because my birthday's December 19th. So I thought, wow, we had changed history. We had changed history.
Powerful.
It was. Well, it gets even better. So I expected to go home on that Monday, because my birthday was on that Sunday. That Monday is the 20th. And so I'm getting ready to go home, and I'm in one of the offices at the Human Rights Campaign. In fact, David Smith, I remember, and the phone rings, and he goes, he's right here, hold on. And I said, who is it? He goes, it's the White House. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm like, I'm thinking it could be the president. It wasn't the president. And So it's Brian Bond, and Brian's like, "Hi, Eric. I'm Brian Bond. I'm the president's director of something." And I was like, he goes, "I need your social security number." I'm like, "Oh my God, what did I do?" And the reason why he wanted it was because all of us thought the president was going to sign the bill after the holidays. So 2 days later, on December 22nd, 2010, at the Department of Interior, the president signed the law, just like a little stage, a curtain like this, but a bigger room, and the table was right here, and I actually stood behind his right shoulder to watch over him and just see his hand go like that and everything. And people often ask me, Eric, so if I wasn't on TV more and more, now I was on TV even more, like, Eric's next to the president. And people often ask me, like, how close were you, Eric? I said, I could smell his cologne. He was wearing cologne. But it's interesting. Another history lesson. You ever seen when the presidents, and here you go, and I couldn't have Google on the stage to see, like, how a president signs a bill. You ever see a president or someone like a governor or a mayor, the city, they have these box of pens, or it's like a big box of pens. They have all these pens. So they pick up a pen, they touch the paper, they put the pen down, and all this time I thought they're just doing all these signatures over and over. So those pens, they're literally using one pen for one letter of their name. So he took a pen, he did the B, put the pen down, got the second pen, did the A, and he took 2 pens to do the K. I saw it, trust me. And the 2 pens, because he did the vertical line, and then he took the second pen and he did the sideways V for the K. So what they do is they give those pens out to people. So, no, I didn't get a pin. People often ask me, like, did you get a pin, Eric? I said, no. They're like, why? And then, you know what? It wasn't about the pin. I was up there representing the thousands and thousands and, people ever since 1776, this country's existence. And I wasn't the only one. Zoe Dunning was up there, too, a good friend of mine. But to stand there, and the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff was up there, Admiral Mullen. The vice president was next to me. To be next to the president of the United States signing a bill into history was amazing. I still get speechless about it. But we had changed history. Gays were now allowed to serve in the military. Not all. And what I mean by that is that you have the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender population. That law, which is in existence today and will be 4 years this year, because the law didn't take effect until September of 2011, September 20th. Because it had to go through its whole implementation process. The rules had to be changed, or the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is our law for the military. So September will be 4 years that the military has been open to allowing gay people to serve in the military, allowing gay, bisexual, and gay lesbians and bisexual GLB people to serve in the military. We didn't fulfill what we really should have done, and to allow transgender individuals to serve in the military as well. So we have work to do on that part. One of the AP reporters back on February 28, 2007 asked me one time, as I came out of that hearing with Martin Meehan, and said, why now, Eric? It's been 4 years later, since your injury. Why now? And I said, because. I said, when I signed up at 19 years old to defend this country, or like any other man or woman, it was to defend the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to help people live this country as we are the model to the rest of the world on democracy. I said, but shame on us. Shame on us, because we don't do that, even to this day as I'm standing here. I said that those rights, those freedoms, those liberties, those happiness, those right to work where you want, live where you want, marry who you want, belong to every single man, woman, and child, every single individual, not just the selected few, not just the Rush Limbaughs, not just the Sarah Palins, or the people who advocate for rights towards any group of people, not just, the LGBT population. Those rights belong to every single person, in this country. And for us to stand by what we mean by those last 6 words, and liberty with justice for all. Those people who literally get up and say those Pledge of Allegiance at, baseball games, at, banquets, or, especially those like the Sarah Palins, and I don't mean, and I'm not disrespecting her in any way, but to stand there and say, our Pledge of Allegiance, and be shy of, and to now promote legislation on keeping people from being happy is wrong. It's wrong in this world. And so I today now travel the country, and I'm coming on 8 years next month, of public speaking, but also on 12 years, which it'll happen on March 21st, my anniversary. And I often still wonder, and I have no idea what it was that I was going to get out of my vehicle that day. But I still wonder, like, what was I thinking? And I that day, still stays in me all the time. But what I have gained is this perspective on life, and I'll start closing with that, is that, here I am standing on two good legs again, to be in front of a great crowd, to be here at Rider University, to be with my friends, to have this wonderful life that I have. We are grateful, or be grateful for the things you have. You go to a great school, and I'm not saying you're not, but as you go in your further careers, those of you who are maybe graduating next year or this year or 2 years, 3 years from now, always remember that the blessings we have in this life are for us that are very fortunate. Because I remember being in the hospital, I started to do the what ifs. What if I had just taken a nap? What if I didn't eat that MRE? What if I had just gone to the back to eat the MRE? What if? And I was like, why are you doing this, Eric? You can't bring your leg back. It won't come back. But what I can do is live for the future. And I started even going back when I was telling you I was depressed. I was mad at the world because I had lost a leg. And I thought, how this is so awful. And even, I was just mad at the world. Why me? And then I started realizing as the time went on in the hospital, and I started seeing as the war went on, men and women. I mean, we've had more women Purple Heart recipients, and the Purple Heart is the medal of the Purple Heart that people get in combat for being injured. We've had more women as Purple Heart recipients than we had in all the wars combined, because women are on the front lines as well. But I started seeing men and women coming home missing both their legs, or missing an arm and a leg, or being burnt 25-15% of their bodies, their arms and their faces. And I started realizing, Eric, you're complaining because you lost one leg. And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to tell you as far as perspective, that, be grateful for what you have, because you never know how fortunate. I never say the word lucky. I don't use that word. If I win the Powerball, which I would have to play, then I was lucky. But I'm very fortunate and blessed, because it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot worse. And when you think you have it bad, think about the blessings you have, and being fortunate. Because in reality, someone always has it worse than even me and you. In reality, life is a precious thing. We only get this one opportunity, this one chance to be happy, and no one should have that right to steal your happiness. No one has a right to own your happiness. Each and every single individual in this room, and I've even said that to my parents. My parents don't own my happiness. It's mine, and it's yours. Yours is your happiness. We get this one life, because we are only promised today. Tomorrow, when you say, oh, tomorrow's Wednesday, tomorrow's, February 18th, tomorrow is just a word. It doesn't exist. When you wake tomorrow morning, then it's another promised day. So always live your life to the fullest. You guys are young. You have your whole lives ahead of you, so always do the right thing, which I know just even being here. And thank you for allowing me to come speak to you guys. It's been a wonderful opportunity. My life is kind of going through this transition right now, because I just started. I ended up getting my master's as well in social work, and it's interesting because I have a hard time working with the veterans, because I still suffer from PTSD. I cry when I see the veterans, suffering from the heartache of war. So I have now, and I was retired for a while, but I have now taken a job, and I know my friend Mike knows this, and I think Mike knows this too. This week was my first full week, and I think that's why my throat is the way it was. I started working at CVS. So I actually work at CVS now, and I actually work the front counter. And everybody's surprised, all my family, my friends, like, Eric, you have a master's degree, and you're working, greeting people and checking people out. And I'm like, but I'm having fun. I said, I am. And a lot of the customers have already started coming back, and they're like, yay, Eric's here. And then, so I think that's why my voice is hoarse, too, because we're literally greeting people when they come through the door. And I start to recognize them. Good morning, Mrs. Padilla. Good morning, Eric. I mean, it's human kindness and spirit, and I like that. I mean, but I eventually, I'll go probably work at the VA, too, and help the veterans. But this is what I'm doing now. And so I took off time from work today and tomorrow to come do this. But I worked yesterday, and then I have to work Thursday. So, but I want to thank Mike, and especially Bob, who actually put that idea in Mike's head. Bob is like a stalker. We met through Facebook, and he knows that I do public speaking, so he's like, you need to come to Rider. You need to come to Rider. And I was like, who are you? Leave me alone. And eventually, let me just say that good things, happen because, of course, here I am today, and this is another blessing of mine. So thank you again, Bob and Mike and everybody, for allowing me to take up time on your Tuesday evening and share with you my life experience. We all have life experiences. These are our stories, and so don't be afraid to be who you are, or don't let anyone ever try to feel like they're superior over you. It's not their life, it's yours. Like I said, it's your happiness. You deserve it. So thank you again, and I think I'll end with that, and then if anyone wants, feel free to ask me anything. So thank you again one more time. I appreciate it.